Hello and welcome to Decorate It. My name is Mary and this is Wes, and tonight is episode 46. And we wanted to talk about art versus function. We've been focused this entire time on the artistic side of it, but we haven't really dived into where you should be paying attention to where the function has to work, you know. If it doesn't function, what's the point? And function can be doing too long a guide wraps and prohibiting the blank from bending like it should be, or doing a whole slew of things that we're going to discuss tonight. But the whole point of a fishing rod is for it to perform, and it has to perform its job correctly. The artistic stuff that we add to it is great, and it is absolutely something I obviously love and love to teach and love to do and love to experiment with, but we also have to keep in mind that everything has to function. We're not building wall hangers unless that's the goal. We're building fishing rods, right?
Yep. And if this episode ends up offending you, reassess.
What Wes is trying to say is that if you're doing some of these mistakes, try to take it back a little bit. Or maybe you didn't know. Maybe you had, no knowledge of that. It might actually have an issue with it. Or
could be.
Maybe you were trying to stiffen the blank or get it to do something different. So
or
take it with a grain of salt.
Like we've been told before, I've done this for 60 years. Why change?
Mm-hmm.
Because it can actually affect how the rod performs.
What's one of the biggest things that you see people doing that really kind of
grinds my gears?
Grinds your gears, if you will, or takes away the performance of the blank overall?
The number one thing would have to be wrap links in general.
Guide wraps.
Be it guide wraps, ferrule wraps, under wraps, decorative wraps, trim wraps, tip wraps, wraps being just overly long. Like, I'm talking a guide foot that, we'll use even numbers. The guide foot is an inch. You wrap the guide and it's 4 inches.
It's an extremely long guide wrap.
Seen it. That's a problem. It's taking away from the performance. Even if slightly taking away, it's taking away from the function and the performance that rod could be.
Not only have you stiffened it by adding some thread there, now you got to put epoxy on it, which is going to stiffen it even more. So it's not going to want to flex as like it should, which whenever you add too much epoxy or what is it softens the action.
What?
Like if you have like too much guide length, like you're saying a 4-inch guide wrap on that, and instead of it being, I can't remember if it softens it.
Think of it as adding weight and making the rod respond slower.
Yeah, it softens it. I think that's what but yeah, it's slower. It waves.
Instead of it's a woo.
Kind of becomes a noodle.
Yep.
At that point.
It's not as responsive.
Yeah.
It's not as snappy as it could be.
So I guess what about like ferrule wraps that are too long?
When the rod goes to bend, we're taking a circle. That rod wants to go to an oval when it starts to bend.
Which is what it's supposed to do.
Yes.
It's supposed to oval.
Because that's how the spine, that's how all the layers work. That's what's actually happening. Even if it's a minute amount, is trying to oval that blank to bend. When you take a ferrule wrap and put this much on it, and say it's a 7-foot medium heavy, medium light, whatever, you're not allowing that rod to oval like it wants to.
Right.
You're creating pressure points, and thus pressure points are going to break.
Over time. Or they could do it
Or
on
the
the
first
first
time.
cast. First cast, you could go poof, and it might snap.
What's your number one that you see
Too long a decorative wraps is one thing.
on any particular type of rod or just in general?
Just general. I mean, take out surf rods, take out those long casting rods and stuff, because the whole first part of the 2 foot section or the 2 piece thing, you can do whatever you want to on that butt. It is nothing there but a
It's
pin.
not going to affect the function.
Not going to affect the function on that. Like 2 piece surf rods, the thing, Hulk Buster, big example. We can do whatever we want to that because it's not affecting the function. If anything, it helps with swinging it out there.
There's some plugging rods, but even still, you have a solid 3 foot on the back end to work with.
And, you know, putting a wrap and a split grip or something like that. Like we're not talking about the butt sides of this. We're talking about in front of the foregrip. Anything generally past 10 inches on most rods is going to be too long because it's getting into the bend of the blank. And like Wes said, with the guide wraps, you go from circle and it's trying to oval. And if you're one of these people that are prone to wrapping too tight to begin with, you've caused some slight, obviously, you personally wrapping a decorative wrap around a blank is actually not going to squeeze it down to an oval shape unless you're just wrapping stupid tight. You could be already compressing this, and then you hand it off to a customer, and it snaps, and you're like, oh, what happened? Who knows? But wrapping past that 10, 12-inch mark on most rods in front of the foregrip, you're going into the bend. You're causing it to fight itself. It's going to be kind of floppy right there in the middle. It's not going to snap back to action like it should be. And on top of that, you're dealing with a massive amount of taper in that section too, because it's a quick shut off for most blanks after that 10-inch mark. Some of them are a little bit faster than others, but usually when it starts to taper down real quick, like you really shouldn't be wrapping into it. It's a hassle. You're affecting the performance, and honest to God, anything between 6 to 10 inches is perfect in front of the foregrip for most decorative wraps, for most builds. Take fly rods completely out of the equation. I don't think decorative wraps belong on a fly rod unless it's in the 12 weight, you know, up in there. And even keep them little things little short little dudes, because fly rods are a whole different beast than inshore rods and offshore and all this other stuff. Offshore, kind of hard to mess them up. You could wrap to the second guide if you want.
There's ways. there's ways.
I know, we're going to get to it. And on those bigger, heavier weights, if you've got a like fighting handle, like we did with our 10 weight that we had, that little 4-inch between the fighting and the regular grip, I had a wrap in there because in that area it wasn't bending, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But purist will give you a 0 if you take that to a competition. Yes, I will be salty about that for the rest of my life. Don't worry. Other things that I think is not a good idea to do is marble the whole blank from butt to tip. Or wrapping it. I saw that in a competition one year. They wrapped the entire blank. Instead of painting it to make it gold metallic, this individual took thread and literally wrapped it from the butt all the way to the tip. And then epoxied over it.
Yep.
And then put the guide wraps and stuff over top of that.
Yep. The function just went to pot.
You could feel a massive difference in how that rod behaved.
You felt how much slower it was to respond to everything. You could legitimately feel the wave going through that rod of it moving.
And then the weight that you added to it that was unnecessary to begin with. You could have just painted it and everything.
It's minuscule weight, but it's still unnecessary weight.
Right. And the rod's fighting it the whole time. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I think that one's another one of your favorite ones.
So you don't see this often on freshwater rods. You usually will see it on saltwater rods. And a lot of times it is heavier boat rods. But epoxying the entire rod can actually affect the function of the rod.
Not permagloss.
Yeah, not permagloss. I'm talking
2-part epoxy.
2-part guide epoxy. The entire length of the rod. Even on boat rods. You're still not allowing the rod to do what it was designed to do. You're adding unnecessary layers to something that is already coated.
Yeah. It's already coated. I mean, the defense in that situation was to protect it. But why? It's already got a protective clear coat on it.
And if it's a sanded raw blank, raw is just unsanded.
Yeah.
But a sanded blank where it has that matte finish, grab some permagloss. Grab some 2K clear spray. Send it to Don Schaefer and get it clear coated.
Or ask your local automotive shop if they'll do it for you.
Yeah, like you don't have to add the two-part guide epoxy to the whole rod to protect it if that's what you're worried about. Get a clear coat added to that rod
I can't ever
instead.
say that I ever got stressed out about a rod getting beat up.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean? No matter
Even the
what it
sanded
was.
blanks we've done, just let it ride.
Like, if they're beating it up that bad, they're going to snap it.
It's going to get abused
It's
anyways,
my
and it's going to
opinion.
chip off.
I mean, even the ones that we get painted, like, they may or may not get beat up, if
Mm-hmm.
they're dropping them or closing them in doors or whatever else these people do to their stuff. Like, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Too long of handles. Too long of handles. Why would too long of handles be a drama? Let's say we're talking about a 6 foot rod and we want to put 18 inches of handle length there. What's wrong with that?
Yeah. You're getting into where the action of the rod actually is, and depending on the handle material can hinder said action. So it's obviously an extreme case, but a 6 foot ultralight, and you decide to put some hardwood grips on it with a rear grip and a foregrip, solid rear, not a split, with a 4 or 5 inch rail seat and a 4 or 5 inch foregrip, and you've got
12 inches.
12 inches for the rear grip. Hold on, my math is not
No, you went above the 18.
12, 17, 22 inches. You've got 22 inches of a 6 foot blank that is an ultralight that's going to bend well into that by the time you fully bend that rod to a 90-degree angle. You'll still have bend going into that. At that point, you've got a hardwood handle and your blank's going directly against it. You're creating pressure points.
You're going to get the fish of a lifetime on that one time, and it's just going to go. But having too long of handle lengths, even if it's not wood, let's say that we put too long of a cork handle on there or too long of a EVA, they're all still going to cause pressure points because of the glue that's underneath of them, even though they're a softer material.
Yep. And you can get to the point where even if you're using foam and it's too long into the action, you're now putting pressure points on the glue, and the glue could actually crack, and then you don't have a bond.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are certain situations where we've got like 7 foot men, right? And they're used to their 7 foot length rods, but the handle lengths are too short for them, right? You're going to have to convince that person to step out of that 7 foot mindset that that's what he's been working with and go to something that's a little bit longer so that you can accommodate for the handle length that he needs being that tall and make it work for him instead of going, well, yeah, we'll put a 18 to 20 inch, rear on that, but it'll be 7, because at the end of the day, he's not going to be happy with how that performs either.
And it depends on the action of the rod that he's wanting too. If he's wanting a 7 foot heavy for flipping and pitching, put him at a 7.6 or 7.11 and just make the handle length that he wants. But if he's wanting a 7 foot so that he can take it and do closer work, so to speak, taking it in rivers where trees and things like that matter, then you're going to have to work it out to what type of grip he's wanting, what type of handle system he's wanting, and how long is the shortest that you can do and still not affect it.
That's one of those situations that Mark's adjust a butt would have been fantastic to put into, which really sucks that those aren't even made anymore because those were specifically designed for kayak fishing so that whenever they got a fish on, if they needed more leverage, they could just unscrew the butt, pop it out, lock it in place, and now they've got more to fight with.
Yep.
But somebody needs to pick up the patent for it and keep going with it or something because that was actually a really cool butt extension system that wasn't always there for every style of fishing that you were doing. Duncan wants to know, when setting the handle length, check the rod action bend start point.
You need to, but it depends on the type of handles you're putting on it and the length of handles. If you're doing just a standard length on these or you're doing little stubs, it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
We're talking more the extremes of
the entire thing is nothing but grip material.
You're doing 22, 24 inches worth of grip with rail seat and it doesn't have any kind of break point and it's a 6 foot ultralight.
But on
or a
that
5.6 ultralight.
But on that note, sorry. I thought you were done. But on that note, you should be measuring your arm length or the customers or any of that nature and finding a rod where it sits perfectly how it sits in their hands.
Mm-hmm.
And then that gets adjusted to how they're fighting or using it, what style they're using it as, pure rods and like, offshore and boat rods are a slight exception because they're pretty much set up almost identical. A little bit changes here and there depending on the style of fishing, but the handle lengths are about generally the same,
Mm-hmm.
unless you're, 7 foot and then they need a longer handle. But you have to kind of figure it out based off of what's comfortable for you. Like the bass rods, for instance, that we just did. I had him test them and comfortably hit them in his hand and stuff with the style of fishing and stuff. Because before we were the decorative studio, Wes had Palmetto Rod and Reel, and 90% of his clientele was surf and bass guys. So we know the bass rods and style specifically around in this area.
Unfortunately.
So he's used to the handle lengths and stuff. And so we generally know how to set one up. I usually will hand it to him because he did all that. But you kind of have to tweak it. Mark had a cool little system where he just had this blank and he set up on the blank somehow a sliding kind of adjustable grip thing so that they could hold it in their hand with the style of fishing that they were doing, and he can move the grip up or down to find what their comfort spot was. I can't do that with my customers because they're never here.
They're never actually here.
They're never local, so I can't bring them to my shop. I have to ask them to measure certain parts or figure out what their style of fishing is, and generally go, okay, do you have rods in house that you like, and have them measure the length of that area and go, okay, is there any spots that you hate? Is it too short? Is it too long? We have to kind of adjust from there. So it's, to me, there's not like a standard, this is what this should be kind of thing. There's a general idea. It's kind of like the guide trains when you get a guide train layout. Like you got a general idea where it needs to be, but then you got to tweak it down from there.
Yep.
Greg says 14-inch butt on a 10.5 foot works great. Yeah, the longer rods, yeah, obviously. You can get a lot more, definitely, out of those. As a tournament kayak bass fisherman, it's important to keep the butt light and preferably short. This shows less fatigue casting in multiple directions and also quicker to change hands around the kayak while reaching for a net. I build all my rods this way.
Yep, and that's also the exact reason the extend-a-butt was created, so that when you needed that longer butt to be able to fight the fish, you could just slide it out, lock it in place, and still have your original short handle, but have that fighting butt stick out and give you that length to actually lift on the fish.
Yeah, kayaks is definitely I mean, every single genre that we dive into are going to have their exceptions and the things that they need. Kayak, what Barry was saying is a perfect example. They need to be short. Absolutely, because you're only working with what little bit of space you have in the kayak. There is no place to kind of wiggle it around like you would be on a boat.
So the next one, I really don't care about opinions. This is what we do, and this is a controversial topic. Spine versus straightest axis for function. This is what we do. What you do, if it works, is great. But if we get a rod in, I don't care if it is a ice rod or if it is a 6-foot unlimited class. If I can find a defined spine, I'm going to build on it. Unless I have a blank that has a defined spine and it takes a dog leg left. Then I'm going to be talking to the manufacturer and going, hey, can we swap this for another one? If it does not have a defined spine and I find 2 or 3, I look down the blank and whatever's the straightest is what happens.
And we'll locate the spine based off the type of fishing that rod's doing on.
Yes.
The rebar, the one with the fun real seat drama with the wrap and everything, spine is on the bottom because it's a casting.
It depends on where you're defining the spine at, and that gets into a lot of confusion unless people see it. But when I find the spine, I'm taking the tip up and the butt on the ground, and it'll pop because I'm pushing pressure here and pushing up here. Wherever it pops is where it wants to be. If I'm doing casting, the guides are on the back side because it's going this way. If I'm doing spinning, the guides are on the inside of that curve because it wants to go this way. But that's when it has a definitive, defined spine.
Where it goes
singular.
When it pops into that spot.
If I turn it, I find one, turn it, there's another, turn it, there's a soft one there, I'm just building it straight.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not wasting my time.
Mm-mm. Well, no, because they're too finicky. You know,
Hmm.
they're kind of like, I kind of want to be here. No, we're
Hmm.
just gonna go on the
And
straightest axis.
some of them have spines that are like completely opposite each other.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them have spines at 90. Some of them have a spine like this at 45 of each other. Like it's all in how it's rolled, how it's glued, and how it's heated.
Yep.
It's not that big a deal, but for the best function, if it has a defined spine, use it.
Which we kind of sprinkled the surface with that conversation with Mike last week. But I mean, straightest axis in that scenario, yeah, we're gonna do it. But if that blank also is left turn, left turn, maybe looks like a witch's broom, like we had for that example, we're sending that back. We're not building on that.
Yeah.
That's not acceptable. And if if you look down the blank and it's straight and it starts to kind of do that little zigzag and then straightens up again, I'm not keeping that blank. I'm gonna ask for another one because that little wiggle when you're what if a guide lands on that? You know what I'm saying? Like, can you imagine trying to straighten that? Oh no,
We
don't
have seen
worry.
all kinds of wiggles and flops
Mm-hmm.
in blanks.
Yeah, we've been through
But
enough to be it. Tom says it's good to hear people talk about finding the length of the handle placement of seat based on the kind of fishing and the field the fisherman wants.
yep.
I don't think people talk about that enough, honestly. We don't because we're specifically teaching kind of the artistic side of it and how to put your stuff together. But you really, really need to try to get your customers to be happy. That's the whole point with custom rods. They're supposed to build it to match them,
Mm-hmm.
not the general populace, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Question: best spine direction for a spiral wrap bait caster? Great question, Barry.
You're going to treat it like a spinning rod.
Yeah.
You want the last guides that are going to be on the bottom to be on the inside of the curve. That's the whole point of the spiral wrap, is to get it where it wants to go.
So let's say said pin is the blank, right? And they snap it, the spine is, let's say the spine is this part, right? And it snaps into place. Where's he going to put the guides on in relation to that?
What?
This part right here is the spine. That way they can visually
What are you
see
calling the spine?
where it
Is
snaps
this
in,
the inside or the outside of the spine?
just where it snaps into place. However you're holding it. If this is where it snapped
So if
it,
I'm turning it and it snaps like that,
and it snaps like that.
you want your running guides on this side, your choker guides and all on this side.
That's all I was asking.
Real seat is facing this way, trigger is facing this way.
Yeah, they're just trying to give them a visual. Because whenever I said we were putting it on the bottom, I knew because I was visually there, I could see where it was. But then you were like, no, and
You confuse the shit out of me sometimes.
My brain and your brain don't operate the same way. I'm visual. Okay, so handle materials are also very important too. We may love EVA. Like we all know that I love playing around with some EVA. But EVA does not belong on every single build. It's a personal preference on a lot of different builds, especially bass guys. You've got your like 50/50 class that straight cork, straight EVA, but EVA does not belong on fly rods. My personal opinion, because of how soft it is. I don't care if you're using my super dense stuff. I would never put that on a fly rod because of how soft it is and how fatiguing it would be with the continuous casting of that motion all day long. I don't mind putting it on boat rods, but I'm not going to go out of my way to do a very elaborate grip either because a lot of times those are going to get chewed up over time. And EVA definitely doesn't belong on the rail rods either. That's not something you should be putting on those because they're going to get destroyed. That's why a lot of them are paracord.
Well,
West Coast.
you could still use EVA, but
Just
just go into it knowing it's going to dent, it's going to tear, it's going to shred.
you're going to eventually have to put shrink tube over it.
Mm-hmm.
Like and then you've got that weird chunk that's missing in that grip. So not all handle materials belong on everything. We may really love working with cork. Wouldn't put cork on a whole lot of saltwater stuff. There's some stuff it's fine with, but not a whole. I'm definitely not putting it on a boat rod.
Why?
I'm not gonna do it
Why?
because they're gonna beat it up.
It's
That's
fine.
why. And you trying to replace cork on those type of rods is a nightmare because you have to get a certain size for it to work.
It is, but we're differing opinions on that.
I just
I
don't
like
believe in it.
cork on boat rods.
Offshore, you're going to put it on offshore rods. How are you going to find it big enough other than the blocks that we know that we can get our hands on?
I'm gonna call Steve and go, hey, I need this.
Right. That's what I'm
Find
saying.
it.
Other than the blocks, I wouldn't put it on there.
I want to ask and not discuss.
What?
Can you have too many guides on a rod to where it affects function?
Mm, we know this firsthand, don't we? Our competition rod told us.
You're not supposed to answer for people.
I didn't answer. I didn't give him an answer. I just said it. Competition rod told us. They don't know which one. We've never discussed that one.
You have.
Not that part. Not that part.
Yes, you have.
No, I haven't.
Yes, you have.
No, I haven't.
Yes,
I have not discussed that. We discussed the footballs on the guides. That was it. Duncan says yes.
What happens when there's too many guides?
Yes, you can. You also have too few guides too.
Mm-hmm. You can. Like 4.
Isn't that what the Ziplex has? How many guys do they have when they're doing
They
the
do like
casting?
6, 7.
Floppy rod.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Floppy rod best describes it.
It's a
It
floppy rod.
dampens the responsiveness of any blade.
Yeah.
And the same goes for
Too big a guides.
oversizing the guides.
Too much weight reduces casting
Yep.
distance.
Everything. The same also goes for excessive epoxy on the guide wraps.
Barry points out more drag on the line.
Yes.
Most people
that's
don't think
how,
about
how it
that.
reduces casting distance.
Yeah.
But too much epoxy on the guides does the same thing. Having large footballs and too big a guides for the application, too many guides for the application, and you always want to use as few guides as possible to get the results you want.
But obviously keep it off the blank. I mean, the rule kind of is if you got a 7-foot rod, you're going to use at least 8 guides. But it obviously depends on the action of the blank at the tip toward too. But you're really not going to put 10 on that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that's too many. Tom, I'm building a float rod for steelhead salmon. Want to use a piece of driftwood my daughter found in Erie for handle material. Stabilize it before or after turning it. Tom, I'd stabilize it before.
Yeah.
That way it is not going to deteriorate while you're turning it because it can be very soft. And
It can have problems if you don't.
yeah,
basically.
you don't want it to split because then it'll be a big issue.
So
That's your favorite.
I'm going to combine all this into one. Double wraps, triple wraps, and under wraps. Under wraps can be too long. Under wraps can be too thick. It all depends on the size of the guide. But typically, an under wrap, you just want to cover the feet. It doesn't have to go all the way between the feet. It can. It's not going to change that much of it because typically when you're under wrapping, you're doing it on heavier boat rods. So this much versus this much isn't going to make that big a difference. But you only have to do it if you want to under the feet. But I've always, and it's kind of a argumentative point, but I get we use under wraps for prevention of rubbing the guide feet on the blank.
Yeah, no,
But I play devil's advocate all the time, and I like to poke the bear. So why aren't we under wrapping every spinning guide we've ever done?
yeah. Every time we talk about this, I always laugh because people are like, "Oh yeah, that doesn't make sense at all."
Because that foot's directly
Digging into the blank.
digging into it. But we don't under wrap them.
We need to do a test. We need to do a test.
And I get, most of the time when you're using a spinning guide, it's a lighter use case than heavy boat rods, and the duration of the fights are usually shorter. But then I bring in, what about a high-speed vertical jigging rod with spinning guides? That's not a short fight. That's a very abusive fight, and a lot of people don't underwrap it because it's spinning guides. I did on my vertical jigging rod, but I just like to question the norm and why we do things.
But also the overwraps and the triple wraps.
The double and triple wraps.
You're getting off topic.
If you're doing the wrap correctly, a single wrap to a double wrap is all you'll ever need. As long as you're coating it correctly with the right amount of tension and the right amount of epoxy, I have yet to see something pull out. Triple wrapping it is more I'm going to do this to make myself feel better and safer.
I've never understood the whole concept to have a triple wrap. Unless they were using like size D, where there's not as many revolutions over it.
Even then, a double wrap will do it.
Yeah, I agree. But
I would put
wrap
a single wrap of A against a double wrap of D.
Oh yeah.
As far as holding the guide on equally.
100%. I think the only guides that I've ever encountered that had to have an extra bump underneath of them
was the AB1s.
Was the AB1 roller guides because they're articulating.
Yeah, that's just to get the height right.
You do your under wrap like normal, but then you put a bumper underneath just the feet to get them up and make sure that they are able to move, and then you wrap over them, over the top of the feet. But that was just to get them away from the epoxy underneath to be able to make sure that they would continue to keep. Because if you just did them flat to the blank on just the under wrap,
it wouldn't get enough height.
it would get enough height, and you would chance getting the things locked up as well.
Excuse me.
And they wouldn't articulate like they were supposed to. So you had to do a bumper underneath just the feet. But I have never understood having to do a triple wrap. I don't understand doing a double wrap on a bass rod or anything like that either. I get it if you're trying to do an artistic kind of thing where you've done like metallic silver underneath and you're trying to do like some candy color wrap over top with something really thin. I understand that, but the need is also not there. You know, it's just now you're putting the pretty over the functional part of that, in my opinion.
And
take it or leave it.
Barry said, I like to underwrap my bass spinning rod guide feet only with size A and light epoxy before adding the guides. I'm with you, because in practical use application, that's the only way the guide's going to dig into the blank is on a spinning rod.
Yeah, because I mean, the casting rods are flexing away, you know. That's what it just doesn't make sense to have the under wraps on those. Unless you're expecting it to rub. But if they're anchored correctly with an over wrap, how are they moving?
And if they're bending properly based on the static deflection,
how are they moving? How are they rubbing? Any more so
the feet should bend with the rod.
Or flat.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be like digging in or
they should be pulling away from it.
I don't know.
But anyways, I digress. I'm sorry.
That's one of those things that me and him kind of go, I don't really understand that. But Barry, you're probably going to be Wes's new best friend because you agree with that.
Is there anything that you all have seen? I don't want names.
No names.
I don't want companies.
Nope.
I don't care if it's a custom builder or a manufacturer. Are there things you have seen that are put on rods that take away from the function of that rod? Do not call anybody out. I will delete your comment quicker than you can type it.
We don't do that.
We're not
here.
For the drama. I'm here for the tea.
The tea without the drama?
Yeah.
No sauce, right?
No sauce. I just want the tea.
Spiral wrap from the second last to the tip. Spiral wrap from the second last. Are you talking about they put a spiral just at the tip? Are you serious?
I could see that being done.
Why? Why? I have an easy one, crooked guides. Carlos, I'm with you. Like, our guides have got to be straight. It just drives me nuts. It's when I suck at lining up my guides. I'll get them about 90% there, and I hand them off to him.
90 my ass.
I've gotten better. Boy, don't you play with me. I have gotten better. Decals can be obnoxious. I'm anti-decal, honest to God. I really am.
She needs to be a little more decal.
I actually got...
She didn't even label her rods.
I got fussed at. Kevin from Mudhole fussed at me for not putting the business name on the rods, and I was like, I don't have a decal for it because it's really long now that I'm thinking about it, and I was like, it's kind of hard to make it little, and I don't like to put decals on the rods unless the customer requests that it has to be on there, and so I just don't put them on there. But he's like, you need to have your business name on there somewhere. Redo your, not rename your business, but figure out how to make your logo work that's smaller so you actually be acceptable for you to put it somewhere. And I'm like, But yeah, I agree. Some people go a little nuts with them. I would say the most frequent thing I see when I'm fixing rods is too much epoxy on the guides. It does affect the rod. Yeah. That is the worst thing, is seeing so much epoxy. And that creates premature cracking. Any salt water is the worst, but once you get that crack in there, then you start to get water in there, and then it starts to erode the foot, and then they rust, and then it does. No, you don't need that much epoxy. Double foot guides on light rods. If you don't need the double foot, you don't need to do it.
The only time I see a double foot being used on a light rod would be the initial stripper guide, the initial biggest one, and that's a very rare occasion that I would do that.
Yeah. Or now, because the guides and everything's starting to come, is starting to get better with the guide trains and stuff, and now everybody's moving towards, get it under control faster. Yeah. Seeing the 30, 25, 20, like the big step down, the old school layout. Like, get away from that.
I gotta have every size of every guide on here.
Globs of epoxy on the frames kill me.
Mine is when you can't see the frames.
The frames.
So it's a double foot, and it's a true double foot to where like it's separated, but the epoxy covers all of it.
And that's just a nightmare waiting to happen. You flex that rod the first time, all you're going to hear is pop, 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 or the epoxy's cracking. Like, oh, not cool. This is just a pet peeve of mine, but it has nothing to do with function or whatever. But seeing glue lines, I can't stand to see glue. But it ain't got nothing to do with function. It's just a pet peeve. Now what we talking about? Because
Now,
people
now she
obviously,
getting petty.
it's a pet peeve. I can't stand glue lines. I can't
Getting petty.
stand to see glue at all. Like I'll sit there for an hour. I actually got mad because these 4 stand-up rods that we did earlier, at the
Seeped
beginning of
out.
them, some of it seeped out, and I'm in here with a razor, like trying to like pop it out because it's already set up. I can't wipe it off. And Wes is like, "Why are you stressing about that? You're gonna wrap over it." And I'm like, "I still don't want to see."
That's one of the biggest for me is when you have a double foot, but you can't see both feet.
The overly long wraps, the old school saltwater rods were like that, where they
Mm-hmm.
had the extremely long guide wraps that were like this long, and the
But
guide is not even that long.
at the
But
same time,
those rods were floppy too.
they were glass to begin with.
With
And I had an old man tell me one time that he did it that way so that he could determine how much action he was actually going to use of that rod based on how much he was adding to it. And I thought, okay, I could get that, but why not just get the rod you want?
right? I mean, maybe from a learning perspective, like you're growing up from that, and you're seeing, okay, well, I could do it this way, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah. I mean, that's fine, but doing it consistently, or that's something that's like part of the production. Like my guide wraps, I generally do not do a whole lot of fancy stuff on them. First off, I hate them. I hate doing guide wraps, but I also do them so close to the foot. Like there's like a three to 5 turns before the guide foot, and it's up. And it's very rare that I'll even put any kind of like decorative stuff on it. The Sugar Skull series was the only time that I have wrapped with a solid underneath, epoxied it, and came back and did like a fade over top of it with Madeira. Those rods, it was fine to do it on.
Didn't affect it.
Didn't affect it. I have one true anchor, a fighting rod, which fighting rod, it's live bait, and the other one we kind of built it like a light surf / digging rod, so it was kind of the multiple of both, but didn't affect it because I kept the guide wrap so dang tiny. But I just generally do not do a whole. I hate doing layers of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like that's about it. Like
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
like too long of wraps, and everything is all about hindrance of the performance, and making sure that we're not killing how the blank's action is supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
because that should be top priority. And then if we got places to play, obviously with grips, you can do all kinds of stuff with your grips, whether it's cork, it's wood, adding materials together. Maybe you want to play around with wood, but adding cork with it to lighten the load a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Not all blanks have to have it that way. You can mix it back and forth and it's going to be just fine. But it's really just take into consideration what that blank's performance is supposed to do and then work around it. Let the blank tell you what it can handle and go from there,
Mm-hmm. No, we have not, but I do want to learn how to twist my own snake guides.
What are your thoughts on the size of the tip on the bait caster in relation to the running guides?
Every tip I put on a rod is one size above the last running guides. I don't care what rod it is.
Why do you do that?
Because 9 times out of 10, the tip sits lower than the actual running guides, and you need to go a size up to get it level.
I was expecting you to say because of dew.
That's the legit reason, because if you look at the guides, say you're using 6s all the way out, but you buy a 6 tip. That 6 tip is just slightly lower than the 6 guides. You go to an 8, it's even, or 7.
Yeah, if they've got it in a
Mhm.
7. That way it's not drastic.
And if you're tying something that has a little knot on it or something, it'll come through that tip easier versus snagging every time if
Yeah.
it's a little bit bigger.
Definitely a good thing to do for kids because they're going to get too excited and not knowing. You're like, stop, 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 stop.
I've always gone a size up because I can't, my OCD cannot stand if I'm looking at a rod and I see the running guides and then it goes to the tip.
Well, it's really hard to straighten it too.
I can't. My OCD can't handle it. I don't care if it's right or wrong. You can tell me it's wrong. I'm still gonna do it. Sorry. My OCD cannot handle that drop off at the end of the tip. It has to be flat going across.
Which is another reason why Wes likes super straight blanks. And will not do it tip up, tip down. Unless that's the straightest axis, and then we just deal with it. We had one that was bad last year
Yeah.
that we couldn't get the replacement in, and it definitely had a turn, but we could fix it by rotating it up, and it was straight. But if you had built it the opposite way, it was like, and it was like, And we put blanks like that through the ringer. Like we'll take it over to the spine finder and we'll bend it and we'll do all of the things that you're supposed to do.
We set that blank in a corner opposite the bend for like 3 months.
Try to get it because it wasn't a rush job. So don't be like, oh, Mary's just not doing anything. It wasn't a rush job. We tried to get it to rebend itself back because it
Like
was
we would
bad.
leave and turn the air off, let it warm up in
Put the
here.
heat up in there, try to warm it up a little bit. And we got a little bit of the bend out of it, but I'm sure if we had been, super focused on heating it up and then putting it on the wall, we probably would have got better results. But it was fine. That was one of the ones we were playing around with. Maybe we need higher framed tips, Wes. Haha, make it happen. A higher tip top.
I'll get on that.
Better write it down or you're gonna forget.
Nah, I ain't gonna forget.
Do you use guide laser to align the guides?
No.
We never had any luck with it. I couldn't see the laser when the lights were on, and then when I turned the lights off to be able to see the laser, I can't see. I can't see the guides. I actually face planted in your grandpa's garage because I tripped over one of the cords that's on the floor, and all I hear is him and his grandpa laughing at me.
Yep.
I was like, "How are you supposed to use the laser? You can't see it with the light on. You can't see with the light. You can't see with the light off."
The best way I have found to align guides, if you don't have a white, like I'm talking bright white wall, hang a white poster board on the wall. Go across the room. Have a light hanging in front of that white piece that you're looking at. And hold that rod just like this. And I'm looking exactly where I do mine every time because there's a light above it and a light to the left of it. And it's very bright and it's white over there. And then I'll look down it. And I'll start at the first one and I will manually focus my eyes. I know it sounds weird, but
I can do that
if you do any kind of shooting sports or anything of that sort, you can focus in the front and then focus away. And you go from the first guide to the second guide, then first guide to the third guide, and look you're looking behind the rod, not on top of the rod. You're behind it. And then once I've got all those straight, I will literally take that rod and set it right here, as close to my eyeball as I can, and I'll look down the guide. And then I'll go to the next guide.
And then when he
And
gets
then I'll go to the next guide.
towards the tip, he's asking me to hold the butt.
And then I'll go to the next one. And I'll lay it down all the way. And then once I'm happy that way, I'll take it and I'll go, there's still one out of place. Flip it back over, go fix that one. Flip it back over, go fix it. And then I'll check them again.
And then he'll sometimes get me to get a piece of paper
And go down each guide until I find the one that's screwing me up.
shut off the guides so if you have a helper that it can at least hold a white piece of paper in between the guide train, you can figure out the one that looks funny, because there's always one for me down towards the tip.
Yep.
That's like, it's always like the fourth or fifth one that I just can't quite. I'm like, and even looking upside down, I can't sort out.
There has been times where I just cannot get it looking down it, so I will literally turn it over, put it in the rod chuck, line everything up, and I'll just go down like this.
See if it's splitting even or not.
And I'll make it all straight, and then I'll take it where it's not locked in, look again, make them straight, and I'll leave it. That's it. I'm done. I'm not. If I can't get it after that, I'm not worried about it. It's fine.
Because it's in line. It just looks weird for whatever reason. He wants to know what your thoughts are on microwave guides.
I love them.
We do love microwave guides. We use microwave guides a lot. I have my own set. All of our customers usually will get them.
The only thing I don't like about microwave guides, that they don't offer them with sliding rings.
What, for telescopic?
It'd be kind of hard to do. I get
I was
it.
like, that would be a little rough.
Microwaves are designed for a specific purpose, and I'm just being ornery.
Carlos, what are your thoughts on dirty sides of thread on spin versus casting rod?
Put it away from the visible side.
Yep, it has to be opposite of that. Now, it is a little tricky with spinning rods because the foot is on that side, right?
Yep.
And you can't really do your dirty side if you're doing a lot of changes on that.
You can do it on the foot.
I don't do it on the foot. I do it to the side of the foot, so I know it's locked in. You can't see it visibly from the top. You can only see it just slightly on the side. And if it is a spinning rod where I'm doing a whole lot of elaborate stuff, that side, I pay more attention to the dirty side than I do anything else, because I'm trying to make sure everything is running straight and true, so nobody is seeing any kind of like flaw where it might be dipping down or doing anything like that. Because me personally, when I tried to do it on the foot in previous years, even if it was just a single inlay or whatever the case may be, it was always coming loose because of how it goes up on the foot and comes back down. And so I always will do it to the side.
I need you to watch her face as I say this. Just put the dirty side on the visible side and be better.
No. But opposite of how you see it. That's how it should be.
Yes. Why micro guides? Define micro.
Microwave or micro? There's two different ones. And I hate micro
Are we
guides.
talking micro or macro? Like how small are you talking? Because I will not go below a 5.
Mm-mm.
I refuse.
I won't even do it. I hate micro
I'll
guides.
glue it on and hand it back to you and go, here, you do it.
That's when that rod adhesive, the glue adhesive helps for the guides.
I'm still not going to do it because then I have to battle that glue adhesive after it's wrapped
Mm-hmm.
to be able to straighten it.
Yeah, that's the reason why I don't like to
I
use
won't
it.
go below 5s.
Barry says, when lining up guides, I use a line from the tip through the guides to cut off the reel post.
Mm-hmm.
To a cut-off reel post. Yeah, that's one way to do it, too.
And CRB has that aluminum piece that goes in it.
You talking about the guide alignment?
Yeah, it helps.
Actually, it's not a guide alignment. It's actually the reel seat alignment.
Yeah, but that helps in, like, spotting to where you need to be.
Yeah, you can put it in the reel and be able to see.
Yeah, Derek, I won't go below a 5. I see no point in it.
100% agree. Seeing dirty sides opposite of the guide feed on spinning rods, and it makes my eye twitch. Ew! No, that should not be a thing. Whatever side that the customer is looking at should be the prettiest one. The other side shouldn't look awful either, but the side that the customer is seeing should be the absolute like perfection.
Yeah.
But once again, spinning, I'm gonna put it as close as I can to the guide foot, but I'm not gonna put it on the guide foot.
You know, don't take that as gospel, Derek. But
we just have a personal hatred for them. Too many ducats.
I won't say the word.
We say ducat with a PH. That's what we call them.
Yeah.
They are the...
Replace the D with PH.
We got so many
I
of those
don't
back
like
in.
tiny micro guides.
I got sick of wrapping those things.
My stance is friction on line. The tinier the guide, the more contact you're going to have on that line. And the more likelihood that if you want to fish in winter,
it's going to freeze up.
It's going to freeze up. And just stop.
You're really SOL on that one if they freeze up.
I don't see the point in going below a 5. Somebody may be able to explain that to me, and I'm still going to look at them and go,
no thanks.
No, I'm not doing it.
You can take it.
It's something I just don't care to advance through.
All right, we're going to pause with the questions, and we can keep going with them in a little bit, but let's talk about our product of the night. Dun, dun, dun. Mudhole is having a grand reopening of their showroom on May 31st. Why, may you ask? Well, because they are changing it out so that it's even better. They're going to add quite a few different lineup of rods, reels, combos, tackle, and apparel. And with the grand reopening on Saturday, May 31st, they're going to have free giveaways if you can make it. They're going to have food and representatives from AFCO, Marshware, Baggio, Baits, Reels, Cash and Rods, Portland, Iowa, Fitzgerald Fishing, Florida Fishing Products, JYG Jigs is going to be there, Mighty River Recovery, the NLBN, Seminole Junior Anglers, Missouri, and Terry Big Show's Scroggins will actually be there himself. So get a chance to network with some fellow anglers, learn about industry experts, and also score some exclusive deals and raffle prizes. Also by celebrating Mudhole's next chapter. So you don't have to pay for admission. Obviously, it's free. You just show up and walk in there, and while you're there, you can also say, hey, maybe buy something that you need for your rod, and let me know what it looks like, because I'm not going to be there, unfortunately, because
until July.
We'll be there in July, but not at the end of May. But if you can get down there and visit the showroom, it'd be awesome. And if not, you can visit it later on in the year when other things are taking place that we can't say yet.
I totally thought you were going to say Jig Jigs.
Jig Jigs, no. I know JY Jigs, because that was Hot Dog Rod. And I've got another one of his blanks over there for that guy, too, when he decides what he's going to do.
I was hoping you would say Jig Jigs.
Jig Jigs. That's like at the school music thing, ABBA. No, guys, it's not ABBA. It's
ABBA.
ABBA. Why are you calling it ABBA? Also, I want to take a minute to thank our sponsors, Mudhole, and really appreciate all the things that they do for us, the giveaways that we're about to give away in just a minute. Woo-hoo. They have been an awesome company to work with and work for, and we look forward to all the things that are coming up. There's some cool stuff happening later on in the year as well, and those dates will be announced as soon as we have them locked in and are official. So be on the lookout for that. And also, don't forget to check out their live show that's coming up. And also, if you're not aware of it, there's a great journal that Chris Adams writes that gives a lot of information about different styles of fishing, and one of his latest ones was, does a decorative wrap weigh you down? And if you read that article, it actually proves a little bit more of my point that decorative wraps don't really add that much weight to it. So it's kind of a fun little chicken somebody's side. I'm actually going, he did an open wrap for his, but I'm going to test some closed wraps on mine and just see what the difference is between a closed wrap versus an open wrap. And also, blank size does matter too with that. But if you get anything that you want to order from Mudhole, don't forget to use Decorate at 10 to save you 10% on CRB products, Pro products, MHX, Gaho, American Tackle. All of that stuff is got 10% off of it. It can't be combined with other discounts, but it can save you money on all of the daily things that you could possibly need.
Like a power wrapper.
Like a power wrapper or a butt alignment jig, or maybe also what we're talking about tonight.
As the giveaway.
As our giveaway. And our giveaway is going to be, dun dun dun,
Handy Dandy Spine Finder. So I actually like this one because it has the adaptability to move positions based on what you need to do with it. Has ball bearings inside so that it does actually free flow and roll. The prior models did not have this capability, but the newest model can be attached to the CRB track so that while you're working you can attach it to the track, put your rod in it, spine it, take it off, put the rod in the chuck, and start working on it.
Newest update. And you also have 5 different slots. You can change the angle so that you can have it at its highest, or
You can
gradually
do it flat,
check it.
however.
I thought the addition to be able to add it to the track was actually kind of cool.
Yep.
The way you're going to win this is you're going to answer a question.
I'm going to give you a hint. She's going to ask the question.
I get to ask questions tonight, guys.
Go to mudhole.com.
Oh, you're going to give it to them.
Go to the how-to section, tips and tricks.
I mentioned this in the thank you in the sponsor part. Chris Adams wrote a journal on can a decorative wrap weigh you down? And in the article, he goes through how much epoxy was added to it, how much the weight was added to it. And the question I need answered for you to be able to win the Spine Finder is how much weight was added total to that rod that he did. And he gives you 2 different measurements, either one of them that you say, I will take. But how much weight did that wrap and those 3 coats of epoxy add to that rod? Carlos gets it. It is 0.158 ounces, or roughly an eighth of an ounce. That's how much the decorative wrap actually added. So Carlos, congratulations. You win a Spine Finder and deflection system. Dun, dun, dun.
There is a ton of information in there.
Yeah, not all of it's super interesting for me, but I will generally go through there and read some of the stuff, and I like how Chris keeps his tone as a individual in his stuff too, because it's fun to read some of that.
Yep. It's not like that much weight at all. And he even talks about can you actually tell the difference in this?
And then he puts in some scientific, whatever the law is, and I'm lost already. But no, it's not that much weight.
But if you haven't read that article, it's definitely a good one.
Mm-hmm.
To sit on the throne and read about.
Yeah, it's not a long read at all.
It's not.
But he did an open wrap, and he put some of the braid in with some regular thread, and so I'd be curious to see how much the closed wrap. When I weighed one of the bass rods, I forgot to weigh one prior to me adding to the wrap to it, but the overall weight of it was less than the marbled rod I did, and it wasn't, I don't even remember the number on it. It was less than 4 ounces, but it was honestly minuscule because you couldn't tell the difference between the marbled rod versus the wrapped rod. It was like this, as long it was balanced, so that it didn't really matter.
Yeah. All right. Q&A.
Yep, Q&A. Anybody else have any more questions, comments, concerns? Just wanted to say thanks to Mary for personal help with visual wrap. You're welcome. You are welcome.
She'll know what she's doing.
I don't. I never know what I'm doing. I'm winging it. Actually, with visual wrap, I'm totally not winging it, but totally self-taught. I obviously have listened to David and stuff, but I don't retain. It's crazy. I don't retain the information that well until my mind says, "Okay, we're gonna focus on this," and I really have to just kind of fumble my way through stuff to remember it. What kind of paint do I use to autograph a finished rod? I have always just used the Sharpie paint pens to do it, which is acrylic. And then you can get them in the extra fine point, which is what I use to mark out the stuff, and it's a little bit easier to control it. I know some people would use testers, but anything acrylic or testers or anything like that, to me, the paint pens are easier because it's a pen. You can signature it easier that way.
Carlos, it honestly depends on the epoxy. If we're using Pro Coat High Build,
I don't use it.
I use it for certain applications because it is a very thick one. I will warm that. If it's medium build, I don't.
But
If
we're
it's
climate controlled area.
if it's next level, yes, I'm warming that because that's just dope. And if it's Gen 4, it's kind of iffy if I warm it or not. It depends on conditions in the shop. I like light build a lot.
I'd rather do light build. I don't like the thicker stuff.
I'd rather just use light build and do multiple coats versus heating. I had a bad experience using heat.
You talking about the one that turned to
A
paste?
bad experience.
You talking about that one?
It's a bad experience.
We were on a live video for Southern. Gosh, this was like
And I wasn't
7 or
paying
8 years
attention.
ago.
I was zoned out using the heat gun.
I was talking.
And I had it set to like 300 degrees. And I'm just sitting there torching it, not even paying attention. And next thing I know, it just sets.
It looked like he had pro paste in the cup.
What in the world happened?
He's like pulling it up. He's like, what is this?
And like as I'm pulling it, it just dries instant, just sets up. I think that was
That was a long time ago.
God, that was classic coat. I did that on.
Yeah. Yeah, because
And it just immediately set up.
You torched it. I recently started doing it after using next level stuff that's thicker than a bowl of oatmeal.
It's thicker than a Snicker.
Thicker than a Snicker.
Yeah, but next level I do heat that because I can't work with it if it's not like liquid.
It's got to have some viscosity to it. It can't be like water, but it can't be like propane.
I don't want it like baby oil, but I don't want it. Yeah,
like that stuff.
baby oil.
That stuff that we were testing. It's like water. We couldn't control. You couldn't control
I
it.
couldn't do anything with it.
I was like, that needs to be thickened up a little bit.
And I get good results from all epoxies. But if I don't like how it works, I will add heat and change how it works.
Even when they tell you not to.
Yeah, I don't care. If I don't like how it functions, I'm going to make it function how I want it to every time.
Mm-hmm. And just take into account if it's going to set up faster or not because of
Yep.
it. On guide wrap, do you stop the epoxy at the end of the wrap or just a little past?
I want it to kiss the blank.
Yeah, just a little past. You want to seal the edge of the thread. You know what I mean?
I basically, like when I do it, I want it to look as though there's a black thread next to whatever I'm finishing, but that's the line of the epoxy.
Yeah.
Maybe a double black thread, but
So the way he usually does it is like he'll do the first couple of coats to the thread, and that last one goes over it, so that you don't have to keep going past it, and that just kind of.
Yeah, I'll stay on the thread for every coat, but the last one or two, and then I'll go just past the thread and around it.
Mm-hmm. Don't forget to get in your channels. You gotta fill in those voids.
And just because you see it on TikTok doesn't mean that's actually how they do it.
Right. And they're done. No, that's not how they do it. And if that's how they're doing it, that's terrible. Sure, that part looks great, but you gotta fill the voids.
Because I know for a fact
One person in particular that
Cinco
makes
Stick
that,
does their guide wrap videos
but that's
that
not-
way on purpose
Mhm.
because that's not how he does his epoxy.
He actually does fill the voids,
He does a great job at epoxy.
but you can't tell off of the video because he's just focused on the foot. And you're like, wait a minute.
It's to get you.
That's one of the other things that people mess up a lot. They'll have like a 1/4 inch of epoxy past threads. Yuck. Yeah, that's too far with the epoxy. The whole point is to keep it close to the thread so that you're not adding epoxy where you don't have to add epoxy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably the reason why I don't like decals so much.
Because you just throw an epoxy on it.
Throw an epoxy to cover the decal. Like, because you can't leave it just there because it's going to peel up and do some stupid stuff or rub off. So you've got to seal it. But then there's this whole section where the decal, and some of the decals are this long with all the specs and everything on it. And you're like,
Now I got to add this much epoxy everywhere around it.
now I've got to shorten what could have been a pretty wrap because I got to slap that thing on it. Or then you've got to incorporate into the wrap. And who does that? Because that's ugly. I've seen some like dragon scales and stuff where it actually does look good. But like a decorative wrap, I'd be like,
Slap it on top of the decorative.
yeah,
wrap.
like here, I did this awesome spider right on top of it. You wanted your
You
specs.
can't read half of it.
It's still brown. Maybe we should start doing it on the side.
Cover up your side pattern.
Cover up. No, because it'd be just on one that's got a top and bottom. I have seen them on the dragon scale, and they do.
They do look good
They
on
do
that.
look good on the dragon scale, but
Depending on the colors.
yeah, it does depend on the decal because some of the colors don't vibe very well with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why I don't like the decals. It's because you do have to put so much epoxy
The
down to cover
decals
them.
I like that I've seen, the ones I like the most, are how Garon does it. Little
They're little,
simple,
bitty
just
bitty.
circle, trim right after the grip, trimmed out, done. That's the cleanest decal on a custom rod I've seen.
Yeah, I don't like the specs at all.
Mm-mm.
I understand why some people want to put them on there,
Yep, I
but
do.
I don't like the specs. The bass guys really want their specs all the time.
I tell them I'll make it in colors so you can remember it.
Yeah, this one is red, this one is green, this one is blue.
I had, I had one. I was before you really like started helping. He was a Marine, and I asked him. I said, "So what color crayon do you want on this one?" He said, "Red."
Red, red. Did he pout about it?
Yeah.
But then we had the one guy whose every rod has to be almost identical with the
Hmm.
red metallic and the Gamecock, the one specific Gamecock sticker that has to be somewhere on there. But he didn't want specs on his.
Yeah.
The bad part about his was we were running out of that one particular red metallic.
Speaking of, didn't he send us a rod to fix?
We already
Did
fixed
we
it.
fix it?
He's already. It's
Okay.
already that was like 6 months ago, and it's been fixed and given back to him. I have a whole video on me fixing that. Actually, I have proof it was done. But no, it's already, it's been gone because he paid you for it. You didn't pay me for it.
Yeah, he
Remember?
paid in like Venmo or
He
something.
Venmoed you money, and I'm like, "Ugh, whatever." Like,
I made easy money.
yeah, you made money off
Here,
of
babe,
me
fix
working.
this.
Here, babe, fix this, and I'll take the money. Great working with you. Thanks. But we were running out of that red metallic that he had, and we had to find a new one because they didn't make that metallic
Hmm.
anymore. And the last one we built for him, we had to introduce that new red to him, not the repair, but the last one. And he was like, "Why is this one a little darker?" And we're like, "Are you serious?"
Oh, he noticed. He wholeheartedly noticed. He's like, "This one's different." Yeah,
It's a
it
little
is.
red.
I told you you'd run out of this eventually.
Mary, is there a place to get your Excel spreadsheet for visual wrap? Yes. If you're in the Southern Rod Builders Facebook group, it's in the file section. You can just download it. If you're not a member of our group, you should be a member of our group. But if you're not a member, you can always email me at thedecorativestudio@gmail.com and I'll just email it to you.
Join the group or
But
you can't have it.
but I should hold it hostage. You should join the group. Join the group. Get the file. It's a free file if you join the group. No, either way, it's fine.
Can't have it.
You can't
It's a
have
secret.
it. It's a secret for my members only. Or if you buy a course. Ha 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 ha. No, either way is fine. You can either be in the group, which I do live video. Oh, crap. I missed last month's live video.
Yep, you did.
I do live videos once a month unless Mary gets really behind on stuff that she's working on to teach stuff. So it's in conjunction with this also. And I haven't been posting in there as much, but we've got some cool stuff in the file section. He said joining now.
That's a lot easier for you that way too,
Yeah, because
because
then you don't have to wait on me.
you don't ever have to post in there, but you could just watch some of the posts and learn a tons of information. And the little search up at the top, if you're looking for something, I guarantee you it's been talked about in there.
Somebody's gonna find it. It's getting a little out of control with a lot of videos being posted, which
Hmm.
I'm okay with some videos being posted, but some of their background music's a little annoying because we'll be listening to their dryer or we'll be listening to some crazy music. But as long as it's pertinent to rod building, I don't particularly care if it gets posted. Now, if somebody's sharing some random video talking about tackle or anything like that, I usually will kick it out if I see it. There was an incident where one of the people had blocked me as an admin because we got into a debacle a couple years ago, and he somehow snuck back in. I think he came in under a different name and then changed his name back, but
Hmm.
he came back in and he was talking down to a whole bunch of members. That's one thing about Southern. We do not allow people to be just mean to each other for no reason.
Just me.
You're not even mean to people unless you have to be.
I'm the only one allowed to.
Yeah. Bandhammer. It's a place where it's all about learning and sharing and, asking questions and stuff. Obviously, I'm not asking everybody to hold hands and sit in the corner and sing Kumbaya, but,
But if you're gonna answer something, be nice.
be nice about it. And if you can't be nice about it, then, just scroll on.
Get out.
Because that's not get out, just scroll on. Not everybody agrees with everybody's doing. I don't agree with everything I see in
You don't have to
either,
agree, and you can comment about not agreeing, but be
but
nice.
just be nice. That's all we ask. Because we don't want it to be like most other groups where there's a lot of people that think it's funny to pick on people and get laughs at their expense or whatever. And I want to try to get better. It's just hard. I want to get better at getting back to the questions of the day and stuff. But I
What you
got,
giving up?
I know. Am I not sleeping?
What are
Like,
you giving up?
there's so much
'Cause
going on right now. I've got to get through this really crazy period of like super busy. Anyways, the only other thing I wanted to say is that the St. John's wrap course is almost finished. It's so close. I expect to have it done by the end of next week or beginning of next week. I'll give myself a little bit of a flow there, but it's very close to coming out. And then I have, per request, been asked to do some marbling course videos, which I never thought that I'd be teaching marbling.
good luck.
It'd be easy because I'm in the shop, and if it messes up, I just erase that and start over, and it's
Mm-hmm.
fine, you know. So I'll have some stuff coming out about the marbling stuff that I've been doing, working with the pigments and the voodoo mud, and I plan to go into the alcohol inks too. I've just started playing around with those. I'm gonna be doing some stuff with that, and I've also come across a couple more ideas that I want to try with making some grips with. And so I've always got stuff I want to work on. The play side of me always wants to do stuff, but the work side of me is like, do this first, and then you can play. Do you have a video making EVA grips, the ones with just the lines of different colors, not the inlays? I have a couple on YouTube that I don't think I've got like basics on there. I think I was teaching the abstract. Was it abstract or kaleidoscope? I don't have a simple one, but I've got a couple reps coming up that I can videotape to be able to show simple pieces being put together. So usually I got like 5 or 6 more grips I've still got to make on my workload with the rods I'm building. So there's always stuff for me to film. It just depends on if it's what you're looking for. But when it comes to function versus the artistic side of it, function has to take the front row seat. It's got to be the most important thing. It has to function. We should not be causing problems to the function. We shouldn't be making floppy rods, as somebody said earlier. We've got to make it function. That's the whole point. We're building fishing rods. It's a tool. It's a tool that is made
Pretty.
to do a job. And then we can take said tool and we can make it pretty, but we can't fight the function in the process of making it pretty in the name of having a longer wrap to say that we wrapped a 12-inch wrap. Don't do that. If you want to wrap a 12-inch wrap to say you did it, get some PVC. If you want to wrap a 12-inch wrap or an 18-inch wrap, put it on the butt section of a two-piece pier rod where that's just the anchor rod and it's not doing anything. The Lua blank. Perfect. Wrap it on that. You got 28 inches of room on the butt handle that you could do that with. Easy peasy. It has to function. There is no way around it. We cannot cause damage to it with the hardness of a grip it's too long, fighting something that's too, parabolic, that's trying to bend into it. Don't put too much epoxy on it. Don't put epoxy all the way up to your guide frames. You're going to cause failures with all of these little things eventually. It may happen the first time you take it out. It might happen the the third, I keep wanting to say the 30th time that you take it out.
There you go. Get it out.
But eventually there's going to be a problem. And if it doesn't fail, per se, maybe you get a crack in the epoxy and now water is getting down in there. I cannot tell you how many rods came back from people needing repairs and guides replaced and stuff. Factory rods as well, where so much epoxy was caked up on the frames, it cracked and all those feet just corroded. And everything starts to eat away from the inside out, and then you get a guide failure from it.
Yep.
Try to keep the epoxy just on the feet and do enough to cover the threads and to get into the little tunnels and stuff, but don't be excessive with it. Don't marble the whole rod. We don't need to marble the whole rod. If you need it to look like marbling all the way down the rod, talk to Don Schaefer. Have him paint it for you so that it's less weight than a razor blade being put on it versus ounces being put on it. Grams. I don't really remember how much that actually would, but it'd be a lot if you were going to marble the whole thing. Don't use a whole thing of epoxy on a rod in the name of protecting it. They're going to get beat up. They're going to get banged on. But I promise you that the finish that's coming from the factory is a lot tougher than the epoxy that's going on it.
Depends on the amount of epoxy.
You put the whole bottle in there, you're talking about a broomstick at that point. Choose your grip material for what is the actual need for that style of rod. And the handle length and all that stuff needs to fit the customer, needs to fit you. Whoever this rod is being built for, you've got to take all this stuff into consideration. And obviously, everything that we have said tonight is personal opinion. But there's also some fact thrown in there too.
It's
All
all
right.
fact.
Wes is going to tell you it's all fact because we're pretty passionate about this kind of stuff. But for the most part, if you're doing things your way and you don't agree with anything we said tonight, cool. You know,
Great.
it is what it is. We're all going to do things a little bit differently, but there's a lot of things that you definitely shouldn't do, like wrapping a rod from the butt to the tip, then coming back with epoxy, and then coming back and putting all the guides and stuff over top of that. That's just adding unnecessary weight. When
To
if
make
you
it try to look pretty.
and if you just were after having a gold metallic, why didn't we just have it painted gold metallic and then clear coated, and it would have been half the weight that you added to it, half the time? How in the world did that man put epoxy from butt to tip and not mess the epoxy up? That's the question of the day for me too. He had to like stop it under a guide rep or
He
something.
did.
There's just no way you're gonna put it. How are you gonna get in the chuck? Anyways, but the bottom line is the rods have to function. And I always get picked on because my rods are very elaborate. I build crazy out of the box kind of rods, but every single one of them functions. Not a single rod that I have built is a wall hanger. Not a single one. I refuse to build wall hangers because I never want a single rod to be like, oh, well, you did build a wall hanger that one time. No. Okay. But every single rod functions, and they do their job exactly how they're supposed to. And I always let the blank tell me exactly what length the wrap it can handle, where can I put the marbling into it, what length the grips do I need, what's going to be too much for this blank, what's going to be, too little for this blank. What does the blank tell me I need to do, and work around it.
She does talk to the blanks. I hear it all the time.
That's actually facts. That's why Alice exists. The good thing is I don't answer myself back all the time. But that's besides the point.
I plead the fifth.
Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. We really appreciate it. And just remember, keep it fun, keep it simple.
Keep it classy.
It's not hard. We can make these things look awesome when we can make them function. And the two of them just need to marry together, and we need to keep some rules into consideration. But we appreciate you guys, and we hope you have a great night. Bye.